Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome yet again to another episode of Lunch Guide. I'm your host Chef Andy, and today we are going to be doing some very beautiful finger food. I'll start off by introducing the ingredients we'll be working with today. So from the front I have some chopped spinach, I've got some cooking cream, I've got some anchovy fillets and some grated hard-boiled egg. I've got a slice of pineapple there, some salt, black pepper, some Parmesan cheese, some chopped up olives and some butter. I also have some grilled bacon, some rosemary, some parsley, a beautiful chicken breast here that's stuffed with some spinach, some ranch sauce here, some chicken sautés that have been marinated, and some red chopped onion, and last but not least, a bit of flour and a bit of water. So I'm just going to give you a break now. We're going to jump into a short break. You can grab your pens and papers, and when we come back, we're going to go straight into the cooking process. See you in a short while. Ladies and gentlemen, for those who missed out on the introduction of this show today, we're going to be doing some beautiful finger food, and I'll be taking you through the whole process. So we're just going to start by making some choux pastry, and for that I'll need some flour, some water, just room temperature water, some salt and some butter. So I'm just going to get that going on the side here. And on this end, we're going to warm up this beautiful griddle, which we'll be doing our chicken sautés on. So it'll also just get that nice and hot. All right, so very simple process of making a choux pastry. As I mentioned, we are going to be doing some finger food. So these are very good, especially for finger food, because you can actually be able to make them to order. You can be able to stuff them with a lot of different varieties of fillings. You can go with cream, you can go with meat, and they can also be sweet. So something that you'll need for this process is a piping bag. It doesn't have to be the disposable clear ones. You do get the white one that you can reuse, but I'll be working with this one for today. So I'll just put that aside. Now to the pan here, what we're going to be adding in here is the butter. And then we're going to add some water and about 2 pinches of salt. So we're basically going to allow that to come back to, we're going to bring that to the boil, and once that goes in, we're going to be cooking up our flour in there. We're going to cook up the starches, and then I'm going to show you how everything goes after that. So while our water heats up, our skillet is nice and hot. So this is very simple. This is already oiled, so all we are going to do now is transfer our sautés onto the pan. Right, so I'll just spread them out. Remember, you can be able to do this on a barbecue grill. You can also, if you don't have a barbecue grill, you could always also do it on a pan, just like I'm doing now. So these we are going to be cooking really slowly. We really want them to cook all the way through. Right, so my pan is going on medium to low heat. All right, next off, we're going to go in with the choux pastry. So my water is nice and bubbly. It's just about bubbly right on the surface. So to that, I'm just going to add my flour as I mix. So what you're looking for a very soft dough that's going to come off this. And what happens is this particular dough is what will be piping into little balls, and we're going to be baking that off, which you'll see much later. So this basically cooks for very, very short time, about 4 to 5 minutes on the heat. Just going to add a little bit of water, and I'm just going to continue mixing. So the process of timing your choux pastry, you're just looking for a stage whereby you have all your dough not sticking to the sides of your bowl. And it should basically be able to form itself into one nice, beautiful consistency, as you can see there. And what I always recommend as well is always try and regulate the temperature by pulling it on and off the heat. Remember, you don't want to overcook it. Right, so our choux pastry is ready, so we are just going to turn this off and we're going to move that to the side. And I have a nice, beautifully prepared piping bag in here, so I always use the same trick I'm using now. Try to use as anything that you can be able to use just to hold your piping bag really well before you pour anything in it. This just makes it a little more easier to work. So this will be going in there hot, but we're not going to pipe it immediately. We're going to give it a few seconds just to cool off. And I always recommend cool off your choux pastry in the piping bag, because then it should be ready for you to just work right after that. Right, so that is done. So we're just going to have a look at our skewers on the side here, and we're going to give them their first turn. Right, those are beautifully cooking. So we're just going to allow those to continue cooking, and I will now show you something that we were doing earlier. Remember, I had mentioned that we are doing some finger food. So first thing I want to show you today, we'll be doing some, I'll be showing you some petit fours that we did with chocolate earlier. So those are just setting in the fridge. I'll just pull them out in a little bit. Right, so we'll just reduce the temperature to low, and we'll just allow those to continue cooking. And this will just give it a bit of a shake. And what you want to do to just allow it to cool off a little faster, you want to take off just about a bit of the tip from the end. This is going to allow you to pipe. And all I'm going to do now is just squeeze the mixture just until it hits the tip of the piping bag. And I'm going to set this aside. Okay, so we're just going to transfer this to the burner at the end here. All right. So as I mentioned earlier, we're just going to be doing some finger food, as I mentioned. We're going to jump into a short break, and when we come back, I'm going to be able to show you what the chocolate petit fours look like. The skewers will be done, so we're just going to go into the process of plating. See you after the short break. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. For those who are just joining us, for those who were with us before the break, we were just working on some chicken skewers, some chicken satay skewers, sorry. Now those are totally cooked now, they're very okay. Now the next step now, I'm going to be showing you how to make choux pastry, and as I'd mentioned earlier, very, very convenient to have a piping bag for this process. So now all I'm going to do is just tighten my bag. This just allows us to get a better grip of the piping bag. Right, and all I'm going to do now is I'm going to start piping onto my already greased baking tray. all we are going to do is pipe as we go. So I'm just gonna go around in circles and finish with a spiral at the top. That should be able to actually give us a bit of height when this is finally cooked. I'm just going to do a couple more with the remaining bit of pastry here. So be as random as you want with this. Remember, at the end of it, we are going to cut them open, and we're gonna be stuffing them with a bit of egg, a bit of cheese. Right, so we're going to play around with a few shapes as well. So I'm also going to make some that are little and elongant. And basically this is just going to go into the oven for about 10 minutes at 200 degrees. Remember, what we're looking for is to have them nicely browned. They're going to be puffed up, and then we're just going to cut them open and put some filling in them. And this makes for a very, very convenient snack that you can be able to use for your guests as finger food. So we're just going to finish piping that last one. And this is just going to go into the oven as it is. Right, so we'll set our oven for 10 minutes, 200 with both top and bottom elements, and we're going to check on that in a little bit. For now, we're just going to start putting together most of the items I mentioned to you earlier. And basically, we will start with the petit fours that I'd mentioned earlier. Now, this is just a very, very simple mold that I use. It's a rubber mold. Very easy to work with, very good to make snacks that you're going to be freezing. For instance, if you're going to be making anything to do with chocolate and you really want to portion them out, these are very handy. And then we're also going to be using some of these garnishes. So this is just basically from the melted chocolate. So all I did was I melted some chocolate in a double boiler. So double boiler basically means that you have a pot of water underneath and you have a bowl on top. It could be stainless or glass, and basically that allows you to just melt the chocolate really well without getting any water in there. And what we did after that is we just made a small piping bag with some parchment paper and we piped these out. So you're going to see where these are gonna go in later on. So what I'll start by doing now is we're going to take this out of the mold and see what they look like. So remember, these are done in advance. You basically melt the chocolate, use a couple of different techniques to finish them off, and then leave them in the freezer overnight or just about an hour before your guests arrive. So I'm first of all going to loosen them a little bit. So and as I mentioned, this is a little more easier to work with than an ice cube tray. But if you can't get your hands on one of this, an ice cube tray will just do the same. So one good technique and reason for me using the rubber mold is the beauty of these. They're very versatile for the reason that you can be able to use it in a hot oven, and you can still be able to put it in your freezer without ruining the quality of the tray on its own, the mold. Right, so those are about loose. So all I'm going to do now is turn these around. I'm just gonna give it a bit of patting with the knife. And all we're going to do is, with the aid of the board, we're just going to try and loosen those out a little bit. So it's always good to just give it a bit of a squeeze just before you smack it hard on the counter. So we're just going to force those out. And I'm just going to show you what those look like. So as I mentioned, if you're just joining us, these are just petit fours that we did earlier. So this is just very much simply chocolate that has been melted into the bowls. We set this in a freezer for about an hour and we're just now taking them out. So for those who are just joining us, remember we were actually working on a few items that you can be able to give your guests as party snacks. And this would be a very, very good option to give your guests, especially for those who have a little bit of a sweet tooth. Right, so these are looking lovely. I'm just going to finish taking those out of the tray. And that is just about the last one we'll take out. And then I'm going to show you the two different varieties of doing your petit fours, so you can be able to do them either in dark or white chocolate. And if you also have some nuts, if you have anything that you can be able to use as a garnish, most of them will really go well with this technique. So here I do have some that have been done in some dark chocolate, some that were done in some white. And we stuffed them all with a mixture of some chopped chocolate bits, some roasted peanuts, and all we did was we just poured them into our mold here, and we allowed that to set. So I'm just going to finish taking all this off. Remember, we do have some choux pastry in the oven, if you can be able to see from there. Those are now starting to just puff up, so I'm just going to push that to an extra 5 minutes. We're just gonna give that a bit of time to cook. Alright, so as I said, very, very simple technique of making some petit fours. Something you can be able to do especially for kid parties. Something you can also be able to serve to your guests after dinner as a snack on its own, or just as an accompaniment to some coffee. Right, so we're just going to jump into the next process, and this is basically the plating of the dish. So I'm just going to grab a plate and we're going to start working on that. And as always, I always prefer to work with a nice big tray, or rather a nice big plate. This looks more appealing, and you can actually be able to put a little more on your plate. So we are going to start with our nice slice of pineapple here, and I'm just going to use this as a garnish. So I'm just going to put that on the corner of my plate, and all I'm going to do is stick some of those satay skewers right into the pineapple, like I'm doing now. And as we always mention on the show, please don't feel that you're obligated to plate it the same way we are doing. You can always try your own techniques. This is just for display and for demonstration. Right, so our satays are on the plate now, nice and beautiful. Right. Now I also have a nice piece of chicken here that we had cooked and stuffed with some spinach and cheese earlier. So this I would be serving it cold, as you see now. And all I'm going to do now is slice this open, and we're just gonna arrange that on our plate. So remember, even when you're making your appetizers or just party snacks, you can actually have a variety of hot and cold items. So this particular one, I'll be serving it just as it is. It's just going to be some pieces of chicken. Right, so I'm just gonna lay those on the plate like that. You can be able to see from the cameras there, nice stuffing of the chicken. You can be able to see the spinach right around there. So basically what went into that, we did some baby spinach, we had some grated Parmesan cheese and some salt and pepper. And then we just baked that for about 10 to 15 minutes in the oven, and it came out. We're just going to serve it like that, but you have the option to actually serve it with a sauce on the side. You can also put a toothpick through it and have it as a canapé on its own. So for the next process, I'm going to be just getting my piping bag ready once more. So this is some ranch dressing which we're going to be using to stuff our choux pastry with. So in here we have a bit of bacon, a bit of cream, a bit of milk, some seasoning, salt, pepper, some oregano, and some olive oil. And basically what we did was we just cooked this and took it out of the heat and allowed it to cool off and thicken while it was off the pan. So now this is going to make a very, very good filling for the choux pastry when that comes out of the oven. Right, and we're just going to leave that on the side like that. And we're gonna go on to our next stage. So now we're going to be doing some beautiful creamed spinach, which we'll be serving also in the choux pastry. And I'm just going to show you how that is done. We'll just give a check here as well. So these are now cooking. These are almost starting to brown. So we're going to give that about another 10 minutes. And in the meantime, we're going to go in with some of our cream spinach. So here I'm working with some spinach, some baby spinach, some whipping cream or cooking cream if you prefer. Just gonna add a bit of oil to the pan and we're gonna give it just a second to reheat. And to this pan, we're going to be adding a bit of some chopped red onions. Also going to be adding a bit of parsley, which I'm going to chop up on the board quickly. So I'm just going to I'm just going to coarsely chop this. Right, so that's about enough. I'm just gonna put that in the pan. Just gonna give that a nice quick toss. Remember, this stage we're just sweating the onions, so we're not going to color them at all. And now I'm going to add my chopped baby spinach in there. And then last but not least, our cooking cream. All we're going to do now is grab a spoon and we're just going to give this a mix until the spinach is just about wilted and the cream is just about thicker than it is now. Last but not least to that, I will add a pinch of salt, maybe 2. And I'll also be adding some black pepper. And last but not least, a bit of Parmesan cheese, some grated Parmesan. We're just going to give that a mix and drop the temperature to low. So this can continue cooking for about half a minute and we're just going to take it off the heat. So as you can see, it's nice and runny, but you want it to be a little thicker. Remember, you don't want it to be too thick, you don't want it to be too thin. And I like to work with a nice big pan because this allows you to thicken the cream a little faster. It gives you a little more surface area to work with. Right, so this is done. This is simple as that. We're just going to turn that off and leave it aside. And now we're just going to start assembling some of the items we already have prepared while we wait for beautiful pastry to come out of the oven. So I'm going to start with a bit of this beautiful bacon. Actually, we're going to take some of these anchovy fillets. We're going to take some of these olives. And all I'm going to do is snap a nice little piece of rosemary there that we can use for garnish. And I'm also going to be using some of these heads from the parsley. Right, so very simple. So all we're going to do now is I'm just going to show you a different kind of appetizer that you can be able to also offer your guests. So here I'm going to be working with some black olives, some pitted black olives and some anchovy fillets. And we're just going to arrange that into a nice shooter glass, which you can be able to serve as it is. So I will first start by scooping a few of those black olives into my small shooter glasses here. So these are very, very handy, especially when making bitings or bite-sized items. The beauty of this is they don't need any cutlery or anything on the side. You can actually just serve them as they are and they will just take them down just they would do with a shooter. Right, so we have some black olives. So now I'm just going to add a few of those anchovy fillets right on top. I'm just going to press those right over the top there. And I'm going to do the same with the other piece. Anchovy fillets, we're using some tinned ones. So remember, these are very salty. You don't really want to add anything to this, you really just want to serve it as it is. And all we are going to do now is finish those off with some garnish. Those are going to go onto our plate. And we're gonna do the same with some of the items in front of us as well. So I'm also going to be using some of this beautiful bacon here. I will also be using, just clear this area quickly. So I'll be using some bacon here, which I want to show you what we'll do with. So always handy to also have a few toothpicks. And here all I'm going to do is just spread about 3 or 4 slices of bacon together. And all I'm going to do is, so basically I'm arranging them on top of each other. And all I'm going to do now is roll it up like that. So this is just a very simple technique you can also use to just serve your cold meats or your cold cuts. Bacon really works well, but remember, if by religion you're not allowed to have any bacon, you can always work with some beef bacon. That also works really well. So I'm just going to arrange a few more slices of bacon. Remember, I'm using back bacon, but if you find rindless bacon, it works just the same. Right, so very, very simple. Just going to strengthen that a little bit. Now that can go straight onto our plate. Right, so our choux pastry is about 2 minutes away. We're just going to give that a bit of time to finish off. And we're just going to take a short commercial break, and when we come back, so that's about done. When we come back, we're just going to finish off plating most of the items that are still remaining. I'm going to show you how to make some beautiful filling with some bacon and some grated eggs on the side there, and then we're just going to finish off, and I'll show you some good techniques of how to decorate your petit fours, your chocolate bites. So we're gonna take a short break. See you in a little while. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. For those who are just joining us, we were just finishing off some of the beautiful finger food that we've been working on today. For those who are just recapping now, I've got some grilled bacon on the plate already. I've got some beautiful satay sticks there. I've got some olive and anchovy tot glasses there. Just beautiful, simple finger food. I've also got this beautiful spinach and feta stuffed chicken breast. And now we're just about to finish that off. To the extreme, to my right here, you can be able to see this beautiful setup. So this is just basically petit fours made from chocolate, and we played with different varieties like vermicelli and nuts and dark and white chocolate, and we came up with this beautiful one. And now, last but not least, we're about to finish this beautiful presentation here. So in this beautiful bowl, I have some cooked spinach with a bit of onion and a bit of parmesan and cream. So it's just creamed spinach. To that, I'm going to add about 3 or 4 tablespoons of grated hard-boiled egg. So these, I just boiled them for about half an hour and then allowed them to cool, and then I just took them through my grater. And now I'm just going to mix these two together. Simply like that. You can see now nice beautiful mixture. And to that, we are just going to plate it here, and I'm just going to show you how we are going to be serving that in a little bit. So that mixture just goes into the bowl like so. So this goes really well with croutons or any bread items that you may have. If you do have breadsticks, if you do have some beautifully grilled bruschettas, you can be able to just serve this and put the bread on the side, or just spread it over the bread. and it goes really well on its own. So for that, I have saved up some of these beautiful sticks we made from some choux pastry. So these I'm just going to put on the plate like that, and that's just going to be served as it is. And now, last but not least, remember I have some ranch filling here that we had actually made a little earlier. And all I'm going to do here is I'm going to use my piping bag, and we are just going to pipe that straight into this beautiful choux pastry cases. So just a nice small incision at the front. Always remember to just tie a beautiful knot over your piping bag to give you a little more grip. And all I'm going to do with this, I've just sliced them open. So all I'm going to do to that is apply some of that filling inside, like that. And that will be it. So this I'll just place right in the center of my plate there. And I'm just gonna repeat the same process with the other two pieces, sorry. And we're just going to fill those up and serve them as they are. So remember, this basically does really well for vegetarian or non-vegetarian, depending on the filling you decide to go with as your option. And they definitely do well for snacks, as I mentioned earlier. If you're going to be doing finger food, you want to make it look interesting, you want to have a variety, which, as you can see, we already have on our display here. And that will be all. So that is some beautifully stuffed choux pastry. So ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure hosting the show today. It's been a pleasure to show you some of these beautiful dishes, and definitely I am hoping that some of you or all of you might be able to try it at home. Remember, you can leave your reviews, your questions, or any inquiries on our page. You've been tuned into BrandPlus TV. The name of the show is Lunch Guide, and I'm your host, Chef Andy. So from me and from the studios, have a lovely day.